Over on Jaguar Eater 7, a new baseball video is out. In this video, we talk about the drama that happened on the 1982 New York Yankees after one pitcher decided to punch a wall. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch. And now, on with our feature presentation. A year ago, I made a video about this running back right here, Virginia running back Terry Kirby, and how he was projected to be a first-round pick by just about every publication under the sun. However, when the 1993 NFL Draft rolled around, the Cavalier did not find himself going in the first round, nor did he find himself going in the second round. Rather, he slipped all the way to the third round, where he was chosen by the Miami Dolphins. Why was that the case? Well, turns out, a rumor was spread by a draft expert that Kirby was blind. I don't mean that he had bad vision when it came to finding holes. I meant that he was literally blind. That statement cost him millions upon millions of dollars. And that statement was a complete lie. Kirby had 20/20 vision in one eye and 20/40 in the other, and no doctor at Virginia or with the Dolphins said that he was blind. Kirby's stock dipped because of irresponsible reporting, and because the rumor mill ran wild to the point where the rumor was taken as a fact. If you want to learn more about that bizarre scenario, you can do so by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And 2 years ago, I made a video about this running back right here, Louisville running back Eric Sheldon, and how he was also projected to be a late first or early second round pick at the 2005 NFL Draft. But as the draft was drawing closer, his stock was slipping, and it was slipping hard. The reason for that? Once again, a rumor was spread, this time by a background check company, that said that Sheldon was a walking red flag who was arrested and convicted for aggravated assault in 1999 and was charged with marijuana possession in 2001. But as it turns out, that was also a complete lie. There was a mix-up with another person named Eric Sheldon, and some general managers and front offices took him off of their board completely, not realizing that Sheldon was an extremely high-character individual who no one had a bad thing to say about. You can learn more about that bizarre scenario by clicking the card in the upper right corner. So I don't know what it is with running backs, but they seem to be the victims of incredibly false rumors and reports that are circulated as the truth and are reported on as facts, and their stock slips tremendously because of it, to the point where they lose out on tons of money in the process. And one man who really knows that is the subject of today's video, Northern Illinois fullback Mark Kellar. Entering the 1974 NFL Draft, Kellar was projected as one of the top fullbacks in the class, and this was at a time when fullbacks were premium picks and routinely went high in the draft. Heck, I did a video about a different fullback at the same 1974 draft class in Bo Matthews, who went number 2 overall to the San Diego Chargers. And you can learn more about that bizarre draft saga by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And yet, as this draft kept progressing on and on, Mark Kellar did not hear his name get called. Tons of picks went by, and tons of players got chosen. And yet, as the clock was ticking away, no Mark Kellar. And the reason for that? A completely false rumor reported on as a fact that tanked his stock completely and cost him a lot of money in the process. Because this is the story behind Mark Kellar, the bizarre drama and controversy at the 1974 NFL Draft, and the lie that ruined Mark Kellar's career. Before I talk about the actual draft and the lie itself, we need some context to understand just how good Kellar was, and why he was projected to go high in the first place. And before I begin, I have to say that I dug high and low for Kellar clips, but unsurprisingly, there's not a whole lot from his time in the NFL, for reasons that will become apparent in just a bit. So these clips are the best that we can do, and are about the only video evidence that Mark Kellar actually played professional football. Here's a trivia question though. Who led Division I in rushing yards in 1973? Who led college football in that category? You might say Pitt running back Tony Dorsett, which is a good guess, seeing as he had 1,686 yards. Nope. You might say Ohio State running back Archie Griffin, which is once again a pretty good guess, seeing as he was 5th in the Heisman voting, had 1,577 yards, and was arguably the best running back in college football history. Nope. You might say Penn State running back John Cappelletti, which is also a great guess, since he won the Heisman and had 1,522 yards. But no. Turns out, while those guys did great and went 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, the leading rusher was none other than Northern Illinois running back Mark Kellar, who had 1,719 yards for the Huskies while averaging 5.9 yards per carry with 16 touchdowns. If you want to know why NIU had a winning record, despite having an abysmal defense that ranked 91st in Division I out of 129 teams, and an offense that threw just 5 touchdowns all season, well, it was because of Mark Kellar, who was a bulldozer. Did he have great speed? Not at all. Was he great in the second level with breakaway speed? Not in the slightest bit. But he was incredible going up the middle, always falling forward, not going down on first contact or going down by one guy, and he seemed like the ideal fullback for the pro level. There is a reason today that Kellar is widely regarded as one of the greatest players and maybe the greatest player in NIU history, and why he's a member of the school's Hall of Fame. To give you an idea of how good he was, the local newspaper proclaimed NIU's final home game of the 1973 season against Western Illinois Mark Kellar Day, and on a local radio station, on a Friday night, as in the day that local radio usually plays upbeat music for gatherings or broadcasts high school football, he got an entire half-hour program dedicated to him and his life. By the time he retired, he had 3,705 career rushing yards, which was the 5th most in college football history, and for the 3rd straight season, was named the team's most valuable offensive player. Combine that with an invite to a postseason All-Star game in front of the scouts, and even though not many people had heard of Northern Illinois, it seemed like the country was ever so slowly starting to catch on to Mark Kellar and keeping an eye out on him. Only once in NIU history at that point had a player been picked inside the top 125, when wide receiver John Spillis got chosen by the Green Bay Packers in the 1969 NFL Draft. And 5 years later, it was looking incredibly likely, heading into 1974, that Kellar would be the second. Which raises the question, where would the leading rusher in all of college football go? In the first round, 6 running backs went, with Bo Matthews going number 2 to the San Diego Chargers, Wilbur Jackson going number 9 to the San Francisco 49ers, Heisman winner John Cappelletti going number 11 to the Los Angeles Rams, Barty Smith going number 12 to the Green Bay Packers, Woody Green going number 16 to the Kansas City Chiefs, and Charlie Young going number 22 to the Dallas Cowboys. None of them were named Mark Kellar. In the second round, another 4 running backs went off the board, with Ed Shellsworth going number 37 to the Baltimore Colts, Benny Malone going number 47 to the Miami Dolphins, Charlie Davis going number 48 to the Cincinnati Bengals, and Delvin Williams going number 49 to the San Francisco 49ers. None of them were named Mark Kellar. In the third round, another 4 running backs went off the board, with Bill Rudder going number 59 to the San Diego Chargers, Cliff Taylor going number 62 to the Chicago Bears, Dexter Bussey going number 65 to the Detroit Lions, and Mark Van Egan going number 75 to the Oakland Raiders. And you can learn more about the bizarre process behind that draft pick made by Al Davis by clicking the card in the upper right corner. None of them were named Mark Kellar. This was bizarre. Through 3 rounds, you had 14 running backs gone, and none of them were the leading rusher in the nation. But the bizarre slide would continue. In the 4th round, 5 more running backs went, with Rod McNeil going number 88 to the New Orleans Saints, Sammy Johnson going number 90 to the San Francisco 49ers, Carlster Crumpler going number 95 to the Buffalo Bills, Vince Kendrick going number 96 to the Atlanta Falcons, and Andy Andre going number 101 to the Dallas Cowboys. None of them were named Mark Kellar. In the 5th round, 4 more running backs went, with Gary Heyman going number 106 to the Buffalo Bills, Andy Johnson going number 112 to the New England Patriots, Haskell Stanback going number 114 to the Cincinnati Bengals, and Monroe Ellie going number 128 to the Atlanta Falcons. Again, none were named Mark Kellar. And in the 6th round, 8 running backs went off the board in the first 150 picks, with Jay Washington going 131 to Kansas City, Don Woods going 134 to Green Bay, Wayne Jones going 137 to the New York Jets, Willie Burton going 139 to Detroit, John Keyworth going 144 to Washington, Billy Pritchett going 146 to Cleveland, Doyle Orange going 147 to Atlanta, and James McAllister going 148 to Oakland. Just to recap, in the first 150 picks, there were 27 running backs and fullbacks taken. Mark Kellar, the leading rusher, and one of the top guys projected by the scouts, was not one of them. It wasn't until pick number 155 in the 6th round, when we were scraping the bottom of the barrel with the second to last pick in the round, that Kellar finally went off the board, when the Minnesota Vikings, as in the team that you've been watching him play for this whole time, eventually took him. Which raises the question, what gives? How did Kellar fall this far? Well, remember the football landscape at the time. In 1974, not only could players go and take their talents to the NFL, or even the CFL, but there was an upstart football league called the World Football League that was trying to lure players to play there, and was throwing money at players left, right, and center. The WFL came to play, as they were putting all their chips in the center of the table to try and get some of the top talent the NFL had to offer. And as it turns out, teams stayed far away from Mark Kellar because he signed for the World Football League, signing close to home with the Chicago Fire. He gets to play pro football in the same state that he played his college ball in, and where he was a hometown hero and a local celebrity, which is something that bothered him not getting that recognition outside of Illinois for being the leading rusher, as he talked about in postseason interviews. Said Kellar after he got invited to the North-South Shrine game, "Sometimes it gets a little discouraging. I feel I did as good as anybody this season, but all I kept hearing was that the number 2 guy was better than me, the number 3 guy was better than me, the number 4 guy was better than me. I mean, I led the nation, but everybody just passed over me. After a while, it can get on your nerves a little." So of course teams would be hesitant to draft Kellar, because what's the point? Yeah, you would own his rights if he ever jumped to the NFL, or if the WFL ever went under and was a financial mess, but that's a huge gamble with an early round pick, taking a guy that might never play for you, and that you don't control, and that you might have to get into a bidding war with. It's almost a catch-22 of sorts. You don't want to spend an early pick on him for that reason, but you don't want to spend a late pick on him either, because you'll have to pay him a ton of money to convince him to not play in the WFL, since he doesn't have the roster security as a late round pick. And obviously, you don't want to do that. It took until pick number 148, when the Oakland Raiders chose running back James McAllister, that a team drafted a player that was already committed to playing in the WFL, taking a flyer on a guy down the road just in case he came back. And that's why Mark Kellar slipped to pick 155. As Chicago Bears head coach Abe Gibbons said on why the Bears didn't draft the hometown hero, "He was signed by the Fire is what I heard. At least somebody in the WFL signed him. I'm not sure what team. That's the rumor anyway. That's why he lasted so long." There's just one small problem with all of this. There's just one teeny tiny problem that we need to address. Yeah, Mark Kellar never signed in the WFL. That was a complete lie. In fact, he had never talked with any WFL team and was never in contact with the league. To make matters crazier, not a single NFL team or representative, not one, ever thought to contact Kellar and ask what his status was. They were just guessing and going off of this rumor and did no due diligence whatsoever. And to make matters even crazier than that, as if it wasn't already crazy enough because it was just a game of he said, she said at this point, a week before the draft, Kellar talked about how he wanted to play in the NFL and wasn't even thinking about the WFL. As Kellar said, money isn't the object here. The minimum salary for an NFL player is probably more than I've ever seen. So every team decided to wait on the leading rusher in college football until pick number 155 because of a rumor that was completely false. And not once did they ever think to call up the man himself and ask him whether or not he actually signed with the Fire or any other team in the WFL for that matter. Absolutely genius. Which is what makes it funny when a week later, the WFL held the second part of their draft. The Fire drafted Kellar, and he decided to spurn the Vikings and the NFL because he thought he would have a better shot at making it onto a WFL roster, and because the NFL flat out disrespected him throughout the entire draft process. You really whiffed there, guys. Said Kellar when he signed with the Fire, I liked the idea of playing in Chicago. I was a Bears fan, and I feel I'll get a much better chance of playing a lot here. So the NFL spurned Mark Kellar by doing no due diligence whatsoever with him. And then, Kellar pulled a reverse Uno card because of it, and because of the incompetence of just about every front office in football in that regard. Now, as you can tell from the highlights you've been watching this whole time, eventually, Kellar played in the NFL with the Vikings. However, outside of special teams duty, he did next to nothing, scoring no touchdowns, getting stuffed more often than not, which he did not do at all at NIU, and having just 91 yards from scrimmage in his 3 seasons with the team from 1976 to 78. I guess he did well for a 6th-round pick, seeing as he played 3 seasons, had his moments, provided help on special teams, and unlike nearly 40% of the 6th-round picks that year, actually made it onto an NFL roster. But the fact that he slipped to the 6th round because of this completely false statement and rumor that easily could have been verified in 5 seconds by just calling him up is insane. Because in 1974, Mark Kellar's NFL dream was put on hold because everyone around the NFL thought that his dream was being put on hold, even though that wasn't what he wanted, and even though that wasn't true. This lie was a killer for Kellar. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.